Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Islam Study Circle. We will begin by studying a verse from the Quran. This is verse 103, to be precise, of Surah Al Imran. It goes like this: وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ فَأَنْقَذَكُم مِّنْهَا كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. And hold fast to the rope of God and be not divided. And bear in mind God's favor on you when you were enemies of one another. So he united your hearts, and with his grace you became brothers. And you stood at the very brink of an abyss of fire, and he saved you from it. In this manner, God explains to you his revelations so that you may be guided. A very important verse of the Quran, and its importance can be understood in the background in which it's giving this guidance. The Arabs, we all know, as the Quran is pointed out here, they were divided amongst each other, they were quarreling against each other, they had altercations, they had disputes, which at times lasted for years, and of course, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of property, a lot of assets, a lot of crops, they would be destroyed. And this would be something that was going on for centuries in Arabia. So the Quran was revealed, and it was the rope of God. So this expression, the rope of God, is of course referring to the Quran because it extends from the Almighty to human beings, so to speak, in a metaphorical way. It is our connection with God. This rope is telling us that we, on the one hand, is God, and the other hand, are we as human beings who are connected to Him. So if we remain connected to Him, if we hold fast to the rope of God, if we adhere to it in a very, very humble way, and at the same time, not in a self-righteous way, the Quran says that the obvious consequence of this would be that you would not be divided. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And of course, it says that this is what happened in the times of the Prophet also. That when people adhered to the Book of God, when they thought that this was their final frontier, it was something that they had to, in all respects, follow. Then, in spite of being enemies, in spite of standing at the abyss of fire, they held on to this rope, and they suddenly transformed themselves into a unit, into a body politic, which was strong, which was very uh, sturdy, and at the same time robust. So it became a force to reckon with. And the Quran says that this is how it actually joined their hearts. So, فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ. So, the Almighty says that the Quran, of course, through the Quran, the Almighty joined their hearts, joined the hearts of the enemies. So the words are, إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. That God's favor upon them was that when they held on to the Quran, they became so closely attached to the Quran that they became brothers to each other. The result of this was that they had this love and regard for each other. So the Quran is something that is the soul and, of course, the body of religion as well. The soul of the religion, of course, refers to the fact that it is like blood which flows through its streams. It keeps it alive. It is something that has to always remain alive, and it actually guarantees our relationship with the Almighty. The stronger this Quran connection, the stronger the God connection. So this Quran connection is something which the Almighty has asked us to always maintain, always give importance to, and studying the Quran in various ways, in various uh, maybe even various parts of the day is something that can really be beneficial. So, first of all, of course, the Quran has to be understood, and this cannot be a fact. This cannot take place unless and until we are able to gauge the meanings of the words that we study. So, it is extremely important that whenever we study the text of the Quran, the Arabic text of the Quran, we must also study its translation, unless, of course, we know the Quranic Arabic so that we are able to directly understand it. But if that is not the case, then it is essential that we do study the Quran with its meanings. Otherwise, it's not going to have the desired effect. Remember, it's a book of guidance, and guidance is something that has to be understood. And if we don't understand what the words say, that guidance will have no effect on us because simply we would not be able to make sense of it. And I have also referred to this earlier on, and I'll do it again, that there is a famous narrative of the Prophet which allegedly says that if you read one word of the Quran, then you'll be rewarded 10 acts of virtue, or for each word, you'll be given 10 rewards. This is an extremely weak narrative. This is not an authentic narrative at all. And it has actually shaped the whole structure and reading of the Quran of our ummah. And people read the Quran just to think, and because they think that this narrative has promised us that whether they understand it or not, it's just by reciting out certain words that for each word, or in fact each letter, they'll get 10 units of reward. As I said, this has no authenticity. It has become famous, and it is extremely dubious and not authentically ascribed to the Prophet. The real purpose of the Quran is to guide mankind, to guide human beings. And until and unless it is followed in our lives, there is no question of any reward being obtained and acquired from it. So the Quran is a book which changes our outlook. It is a book which gives us new frontiers of knowledge to think about. It is a book which has a lot to offer, but then it has also some challenges to the reader. For example, readers who would like to go through its basic message as a reminder for themselves will find it to be a very simple book in which they can grasp the basic message. But readers who would like to become advanced students, who would like to become scholars of this book, they will need to spend a lot of time and delve deep into the literary Arabic of the Quran and understand it. However, as you all know, that this second nature of study is not a requirement from everyone. It is only the requirement from people who are striving to become scholars and doctors of Quran. As far as its simple reading is concerned, this is something that every single person can do in his or her own language. However, as we always discuss this, that if another track is also followed, besides discussing and understanding the Quran in our own language, that track is something that we can keep as a long term target in our lives, and that is to learn this Quranic Arabic so that once the Quran is being read or it is being heard, we are able to directly understand it without having any recourse to its translation. So that should be a target in our lives. And today we find a number of websites, a number of apps through which Quranic Arabic can be learned in a little over a year, maybe, or a year or so, with a 1 hour a day effort. And this is something which is very worthwhile, because imagine the impact the words will have on our hearts. So it's not just the Arabic word that we would be reading or hearing, these are the words of God. And one can imagine the impact they will have on our hearts and our minds. So this is something that we must place as a target before ourselves as much as we can, especially point this out to our children and grandchildren whenever it's possible, that they can spread out this whole education for the Quran in a longer time frame, but keep this as a target, that as the Quran is being read or heard, then they are in a position to directly understand it, because the impact which these words have, the influence that they have on our own selves is so overbearing, it's so overpowering, it's so potent that we feel like acting on what the Quran says. So a translation would just give you a basic message of what the Quran says, but directly understanding the words of the Quran is a much, much potent and a very strong influence on our lives, and it is highly recommended that we set this as a target in our lives. Let us now move on to the second segment of our study circle, which is the Hadith of the day. This is narrative which is recorded in the Al-Jami' al-Sahih of Imam Muslim, and it is reported by Abu Huraira. It says, An al-Aqra ibn Habis, أبصر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقبل الحسن فقال إن لي عشرة من الولد ما قبلت واحدا منهم فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنه من لا يرحم لا يرحم. Abu Huraira anhu reports that Al-Aqra ibn Habis saw the Prophet kissing his grandson Al-Hasan, whereupon Al-Aqra said, I have 10 children and I have never kissed any one of them. At this, God's messenger said, he who is not affectionate to others will not be shown affection from God. So again, a very beautiful piece of advice which we can find from the mouth of the Prophet, someone who is so gentle himself, someone who's so polite himself, that the Quran himself praised the Prophet and said that had he been harsh, had he been impolite, the people around him would have just ran away. Lan fazdu min hawlika. Law kunta fazzan ghaliz al-qalb. Had you been very harsh in your words and harsh in your heart, the people who have now gathered around you would have just run away and scattered away from you, because people come to those who are gentle, who are polite, who give the message of love in a very overbearing way. And this is what the personality of the Prophet was. He would look after people, he would care about people. His countenance would exude love, affection, kindness, and overall, he would be a person who would be selfless as well. And he would not just keep these emotions to himself, as you see from this narrative, that he would express these emotions. So he loved Hassan, his grandson, very much. And in this narrative, Al-Aqra ibn Habis says that he saw the Prophet picking him up and kissing him, as something that he would have thought that, well, why would a Prophet of God pick up a child and start kissing him? He might have thought that, well, this is way beyond his dignity, way beyond his stature. But no, prophets of God are human beings also. And when he kissed Hassan, Al-Aqra himself said to himself actually that, well, I have so many children, I have 10 of them, and I have never been so gentle and kind and affectionate by picking up any one of them and kissing them. And when the Prophet heard this, he said, well, this is that mercy, this is that affection that everyone has. And if he does not express this mercy and affection for other people, then remember, he will not be expressed this mercy and affection by God. So God is affectionate to those who are affectionate to other people. God is kind to those who are kind to other people. And there could be no better kindness than shown to individuals who are weak. So remember, children, they need our love, they need our care, they need our kindness. They look up to us. They are helpless individuals when they are growing up. And if they are given this help and this affection, of course, we all know how it can really shape their lives. So helping helpless people, helping individuals who cannot take care of themselves, including, of course, we can extend this to orphans and old people and even to animals. So we have to be kind in all respects. And kindness is something which does not cost anything. It is also contagious. If we spread kindness, those who are beneficiaries of this kindness will be motivated to spread this kindness further ahead. So kindness and being gentle and being polite and being affectionate, especially to people who are helpless, who might be weak, who might need our help, is something which the Prophet not only preached, as you can see from this narrative, he actually practiced. And what you practice is something in which your preaching will always be effective. If you practice not what you preach, then that preaching is not going to be of any help. So, to live up to the expectations of the Prophet himself, we have to be good human beings. So, remember, this is a human trait. To be gentle is not just something which is confined to Muslims or to Hindus or to any followers of any religion, but this is something which we can call is a common heritage of all humanity. It is something which every single human being is blessed with, that inner affection. We have this in our own selves, and all that we need to do is to express it, yes, in words and also in our deeds and actions, so that it becomes a testament to our inner feelings. At times we are gentle and at times we are kind, affectionate, and polite, but we don't express this. What good would that kindness be if we are not able to have it expressed in our words, in our feelings, in our emotions, and in our actions? It's not going to translate, it's not going to disseminate itself. It has to be expressed. We have to admire people, we have to praise them for what they have done, and especially for the things that they have contributed in our lives. They have to be lauded for that, because as individuals, viewers, we all know that we are weak individuals, and when we are lauded and encouraged, it really boosts our morale, isn't it? Our morale stands boosted. We are inspired to do even more. So this is like a debt that we owe to people who are good in their lives, that we must laud them and praise them and express our loving sentiments for them. And above all, we have to be individuals who are good human beings in all respects. And hate is something that we should hate. Hate is something that we should stay away from. And it is always something that we must look up to. Never be afraid, never be never feel shy if we are trying to be affectionate in a company or a place in which this is not the name of the game, in which people are hostile, in which people are having their own way. Even one person who lights up a candle in the darkness around himself or herself is at times sufficient to make other people realize how potent these emotions are, how strong these feelings are. So, this how the Prophet picked up Hassan and kissed him is something that is should be an object lesson for all of us. That this is something that is not beyond our dignity. Whatever we might become, we might be leaders, we might be intellectuals, we might be uh, bureaucrats, and we might be placed at very high positions in the society. But remember, we are, in spite of all these positions, we are common human beings. And this is what the Prophet has taught us, that never forget that humanity in you, never forget that element of being a human being. Because now we come to the next segment of our study circle, and in this we will study verse from the Old Testament. To be exact, this is the book of Exodus, chapter number 20, verse 12. It says, "Give honor to your father and to your mother, so that your life may be long in the land which the Lord your God is giving you." Obviously, the land which is giving you is referring to the land of Palestine, which was being promised to the Israelites, and they are being told the importance of a father and a mother. So remember that these people were tribal basically in their mentality. They were made of tribes. We know that they consisted of tribes, and tribal mentality is something in which a father and a mother, they hold a very special regard. They are not just your father and mother, but they are also at times leaders of their community and of the tribe as well. And that is why there were very strict rules that have been pronounced in the Old Testament regarding the father and the mother. But here, the Prophet Moses is giving this his special advice to young people, that give honor to your father and to your mother, so that your life may be long in the land. Obviously, it does not refer to the fact that you will have a long life. I mean, that God is going to prolong your individual life, because, of course, the life of every person is fixed. What is being implied here is that as a collectivity, if they honor their father and mother, then the land that they are being promised, they will be able to dominate their land, prevail on that land for a longer period of time, because then there will be people who are actually upholding their covenant with God. We as individuals, our parents have an unwritten right on us. And it's not just the Old Testament. If you look at the Quran, if you look at other scriptures, you'll find that the right of God, right after the right of God, is mentioned, the right of the parents. So much are these parents to be revered, to be respected, that for right after the right of God, right after what God we owe to God, our obligation towards God, the next obligation stands in favor of our parents. And as Prophet Moses has said, that give honor to your father and to your mother, actually implying the same thing as what the Quran has said, وَبِالْ وَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, which means that you treat your father and mother with kindness, especially when they have grown old, especially when they have become irritable, because yes, when they grow old, and especially when they grow very old, they become, and they start resembling children as well. They have the same tantrums, they have the same personalities, they might repeat things, they might forget things, they might say something which might be very sounding very odd. But all these things are something that is part of old age, and every person who passes through old age is bound to pass through these moods and mood swings as well. So to respect our father and mother, to be polite to them, to be honored to them, is something that has to be always maintained. And as we also know that as far as respecting and giving honor to our parents is concerned, it doesn't mean that you have to obey them in all respects. I mean, they are obeying the parents is not mentioned anywhere in the Quran. And in the light of the Quran, if we study old scriptures, you will come to the same conclusion, that showing kindness to them is an obligation, but obeying them, of course, is something which has to be done if that particular order is in line with our own mentality, our own commitments, and our own aptitude. So, in spite of honoring them, if we have to differ with them regarding any of the things that they advise us, it is fine to express our difference. It is fine to tell them that we are utmost respectful towards you, but be mindful that this is a particular issue in which I have a very strong opinion, or I have a different view in life. So they have to respect the view of their children when they grow up. and they should not impose their views on their children, because if they do so, then they don't realize that this is this is sort of a dictatorial practice which this Islam does not condone in any way. We have to be very, very mindful of the fact that as parents, our duty finishes as soon as the children they grow up. Duty in the sense that we just cannot force things upon them. We can always remain their well wishers. We can always advise them. We can always tell them what the right path is in our own experience. But if they are hell bent on doing something which we might think is not correct, all that we need to do is tell them, suggest to them, but we cannot force them to do it, because there are a lot of things that people learn when they do those things and make mistakes. So making mistakes is something which every parent has gone through in his or her own life, and I think this is a leverage that they should give to their children as well. And on the other hand, children have to reciprocate this by respecting them, by not talking back to them, by not speaking in harsh words with them. The Quran has said, La tanharhuma, that don't scold them in any way. This is something which is unheard of. Uh, you can, of course, respect them, so much so that the Quran has gone on to say on one occasion that even if your parents are idolaters, if they are polytheists, you don't listen to what they say regarding polytheism. But sahibhuma fid dunya ma'rufa, but you should deal with them affectionately and kindly. So we know that there is no more thing abhorrent to God than to polytheism. He said that he is never going to forgive those people who are adamant on their polytheism deliberately. But even if their parents, if the parents of people, they stick to polytheism, the Almighty says that there is no cause to be harsh with them. A parent is a parent regardless of his or her beliefs. A parent is a parent regardless of what they believe in. They have this unwritten right on their children that they have to be kind, affectionate, and polite to them, and always realize that once they were helpless individuals in their laps, they were individuals for whom they sacrificed their nights and days and so many other things. And they always placed their children before them. They placed their needs before them. They placed their time, effort, money, everything at their disposal. So we cannot repay our parents, but all that we can do is that we have to be polite, affectionate, and always respectful towards them. They should not in any way think that we are being disrespectful towards them, because this would be something which is, I would say, close to being unforgivable. Because these are parents who have brought us up, they have rights on us, we owe some obligations towards them, and if we don't realize these obligations, then it is all the more reason maybe that we will be forgetting some other major obligations in life as well. So a person who's not thankful to his parents is it's more likely that he's also not going to be thankful to God and to other relatives and relations. So may God keep us on track. May we always honor our father and mother, and may our fathers and mothers, whoever they are, wherever they are, also understand how they must earn this respect and honor by not forcing themselves onto their children. So we come to an end to these segments, and we now go on to the fourth segment, which is a moderated segment. So I will ask Mariam that she can take hold of the mic now, and our discussion today will revolve around who is my role model. So this question that I'm posing here, I would like you to please do not mention two things because they are quite obvious. Neither the prophets of God nor your fathers or mothers or close relatives. So role model here is referring to people who live in the society around you. They might be ordinary people, but people who are living around us, and we get inspired from them and we make them our role models.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Since you said no mother and father and relatives, because that was my first thought in mind, for me personally, I find different traits admirable about different people. So whenever I see a trait that I like in someone a lot, I try to sort of become more like that trait, in the sense that if I find somebody, like for example my boss, she is really really good at sort of, if you go to her with something, like she's really good at listening and then giving very good advice. And so
Okay.
even even when like there have been times where I was wrong in what I was saying, but she would still listen to me calmly and then correct
Mm,
me in a very gentle way. So I
mm,
really like that about her, and I hope to do the same. So whenever I am mentoring my undergrad or like other rotation students, I try to bring that too. So like I try to listen to them before I'd be like,
okay.
no, 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 you're doing this wrong, fix that.
Mm,
So, but
mm,
like now I try to be more like that. So,
okay.
it's these kind of things where I'm like, if I like something about someone, I try to emulate that.
All right. Okay. That's wonderful. So you don't have one particular person to point to. It's like gathering good pieces from everyone around you.
Yeah, because for me, like, I don't see and no one's perfect. So I don't think it's for me at least. I don't see
Mm-hmm.
like why choosing one
Mm-hmm.
role model is, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
should be the case. I think you should just pick and choose the different things
Mm-hmm.
that you like.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fair
And
enough.
we'd love to hear from more people. So I'm not seeing any raised hands. I would highly encourage all the participants to please share.
Mm. Mm.
In the meantime, Dr. Saleem, do you have a role model?
Hmm. Yes, I do have a role model, and my role model is a person that not many people might be knowing. His name is Hamiduddin Farahi. He was a profound scholar of religion, especially the Quran. He lived in the United India in Azamgarh in UP, which is Uttar Pradesh. He lived from 1863 to 1930, around 100 years ago, and he had this exceptional talent to appreciate the literary language of the Quran. And he was a person who broke the barriers of understanding the Quran. He was a person who once again directed the Muslim Ummah towards direct deliberation on the Quran, to understand the Quran directly from its language, directly from its context, directly from parallel verses and construction of the Quran. And he did a profound job. But when he passed away, most of his works were in the Arabic language because he wrote Arabic. However, after his demise, many of his works have been translated into other languages like Urdu and English. And more than that, his own distinguished pupil, Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi, maybe our readers might be more knowing about him. He wrote a 9 volume commentary on the Quran by the name of the Quran. So he was a outstanding disciple and proponent of his teacher Ustaz Hamiduddin Farahi. And so these two individuals, they have the same status, if you ask me, as what Socrates and Plato had in ancient Greek philosophy. Socrates wrote very little. In fact, we don't know about any of his writings. We know him through his student, who was Plato. And so it's very similar here that although Farahi had written a lot of, I mean, some brief uh, understandings of his understanding of the Quran, a couple of books that he was able to complete, but a very major part of his thought was left unfinished, and it was in the form of notes and discussions with his pupil, Ustaz Amin Hasan Islahi. So they are two very outstanding proponents of Quranic understanding, and so I feel that he is one of the most distinguished scholars. And one thing that I might also point out here is that not only was he a scholar of the Quran, a profound scholar of the Quran, he was also a very God-fearing person, an exceptional person, about whom we know that people used to have this discussion whether his knowledge is more or whether his taqwa or his God consciousness is more. So everyone who knows him through his knowledge of the Quran knows how much he knows. So if there was a discussion whether his religiosity was more or his knowledge of the Quran was more, then one can have an idea of the fact that he was also a very, very pious and a very God-fearing person. He was like a person who would be more dedicated to not only just knowledge but also to the practical aspects of knowledge. He was very practicing. On one occasion, he actually was made arbitrator for a dispute about a very large chunk of land, and the two parties who between whom he was adjudicating. So one was his own father, his real father, and and there was another person. So Farahi, when he heard the whole case, he gave this verdict against his father in the favor of the other person, and as a result of that verdict, a very large part of the land that his father could have acquired was lost to the opponent. So this is just one example of his honesty, his distinguished personality.
Oh, that's impressive. Practicing what you preach. I think that's the lesson that I'm hearing again and again. I think the participants might be feeling a bit shy because why are there no raised hands? Okay, how about we make this a bit easier? Let's say, since we can't say about anything about our parents or prophets, how about we each pick a trait that we like in somebody and we say what that trait is? And then I think that should get the discussion going more. Or any trait that you wish you had that you're like, okay, I this trait really inspires me in people. This is something
Hmm.
that I would like to have.
Correct.
Omar Farouk, thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, as far as the trait is concerned, I would go for being humble and
Hmm.
with in the recent time before I in the religious field I felt this trait was very good in Maulana Madudi, and now I see Gandhi Sahab at the peak of it,
Hmm.
and with such a great knowledge
Hmm.
and great humbleness. So this
So
is what I
humility. So humility is something that has really inspired you,
yeah
and that is a
yeah.
trait that you find in these personalities. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you a follow up, Ahmed, if you don't mind. Are there any steps that you have tried to take in order to, you know,
Yeah, and uh, obviously being humility is for some people like it is part of their nature. For some people it's easier, but for some people because of their anger and aggressive
Hmm.
personality it comes difficult.
Hmm.
So I mean the main for myself what I feel is that is it's that control your anger and be good to the people who are your
Hmm.
subordinates especially, yani that the anger is the main problem in here. If you can
Hmm.
control it, and
Hmm.
you should be able to uh, yani listen to your critics, and you should be able to. One of the major thing is that if you let your children speak
Basically,
with you and
right.
criticize you, I think this is also a very helping thing if you can,
Right.
yeah,
That's a
can
good idea.
practice
You
that.
get Yes, you get good feedback from your children, and you have to be humble to listen to them. Otherwise, if you are not
Yeah.
humble, you'll not be listening to them.
thank you so much. That those are some really good points.
Oh,
Thank you. Any more? We'd love to hear more participants. Unless you're like, hey, I'm good. I don't need to change anything about myself, which is fine too. But I think there's always something that we have in life that we're like, hey,
Correct.
let's try to better ourselves in this aspect.
So, if we don't have any participants, maybe we can move on to the next segment.
All right, then the next segment is Q&A. So if you have any questions, raise your hand or type it in the chat, and we'll go from there. Ruhi Rasul, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, in my case, all my teachers almost they had been my uh, role models since my childhood, school time,
Mhm. Okay.
but somehow, I have been a very good student, almost
Mhm.
the top students of my class um,
Okay.
throughout my studies,
Mhm.
and they appreciated me so much. They loved me so much,
Mhm.
and I was also
Mhm.
very fond of them. But
Mhm.
somehow uh, I was I became so happy with
Mhm.
this situation, and perhaps in Urdu I would say that शोखा हो जाना, जिसको which we say.
Mm.
What
Mhm.
what would we call it in English? Uh,
Uh, I think
going
yeah.
beyond your
Be about feeling more about yourselves. I mean, feeling as if you are superior, acting as if you are blessed with a lot of things, and you become
something like that.
yeah.
In Punjabi we call it putar jana, something like that. So
Okay.
I I would uh, go into that sort of mental condition or emotional condition, and in that situation my teachers
Mhm.
would get offended
Mhm.
from me, all of them,
Mhm.
from childhood till my senior classes, all my senior
Okay.
classes, and they got so offended with me that although I respected them so much, I loved them so much, but whether they were
Mhm.
females or males, that I felt a sort of rejection, a sort of
Mm.
hatred uh,
So, as you
that
said,
I
this
would
was
fall in.
because of your own attitude.
Yes, because of my own attitude, although they were my role models.
Mm.
So this sort of rejection from them was so hurtful for me that I would get ill,
Mhm.
actually, seriously ill.
Mhm.
I had to be hospitalized sometimes.
Okay.
So, I don't know that uh, role models, how
Mhm.
to behave with role models.
Okay.
This was my uh, shortcoming, a serious shortcoming,
Mm.
which I could not till my very senior age time. I could not recover, and
Okay.
I would repeat it again and again and again. I
Mhm.
could not recover it, never,
Mhm. Okay.
and I
Okay.
would never learn how to
Mm.
control myself in such a
Okay.
situation.
Okay. So, our deepest prayers and best wishes that now that you have been able to do so, maybe you can become a role model for other people, maybe your own grandchildren or children or people around you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think the one important point here to realize that too is your role models are just humans like you. So,
Mm.
even if you just don't if you feel like you don't know how to act around them, just try to
Mm.
remember how you act around other people so that you can sort of
Mm.
act in a similar way with your role models, just so that it's not y- you know I don't know how to say it in English.
Mm.
Um,
Correct.
yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Welcome.
That is, most of us believe that our lifespan is fixed. I have read this
Mm.
ayah a few minutes ago. You also mentioned that your lifetime is fixed, but in
Mhm.
Surah Fatir, में अल्लाह ताला फरमाते हैं वमा यू अम्मरु
Mm.
मिम अम्मरिन वला यन कुसा मिन उम्र ही इल्ला फी किताब. So it sounds like conditional.
Mm.
That
No,
you
actually,
are,
this is not referring to any fact which says that your life is increased or reduced. It is just telling us that whatever the nature of your lifespan is, whether it is small or less. So nunakkisu or nuammirhu, which you find the Arabic words, they are referring to the fact that whatever your lifespan is, and then the next part of the clause comes in.
inna zalika lillahi yasir.
Yeah, that is something which is, yeah. So you can look this up in the tafsirs of Ustaz Ghamidi and Ustaz Islahi. You'll get the real picture.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Our next question asks, Qur'an is no doubt the robe of Allah, but we see by the time the reign of Uthman reached after his assassination, there was conversion to Malukiya. Was this conversion a bad phenomena and must not have happened, and the various incidences like Battle of Camel and Siffin stand contrary to this Quranic direction of adhering to the rope of Allah? Or is it or it was a religio-political struggle in a certain context?
I would say that it was more of the latter, a religio-political struggle. And also, I think that at times when you are trying to adhere to the Quran, you're trying to make a point out of it, then basically that particular adherence is referring to a particular directive from the Quran. So, see, this verse that we studied today refers to things that relate to differences in religion and anything in which we might have a cause of dispute. So, what actually happened in the times of Osman and post-Osmanic period, they had more to do with human, I would say, the way people behave, the way they would like to go, make the things go their own way, and some of the things that they thought were taking place in a wrong way. So it's like that they were not disregarding the Quran in any way. In their own humble right, they were thinking that they were following the Quran. But you see, at times when you start following the Quran, and you might have some other motives as well besides what the Quran is telling us. Regardless of what those motives are, there could be that you are trying to gain political authority because you think it's your right, as was the case with the people who following Ali and his Ali Radhiyallahu anhu, and then there were other people who thought that Khilafat or political authority was not the right, not his right, and it was basically the right of the Muslims to choose who would they like to install as their ruler. So basically, it was this dispute which has to this day divided our Muslim Ummah into two broad sects of the Shiites and the Sunni sects. So this is also derived from the Quran itself, and although in this case, the Shiite brothers, they say that whatever has been given to Ali as the successor of the Prophet was something that is outside of the Quran, and as the Prophet had actually promised him that he would be the Caliph after him, and for this they do not cite the Quran. They have outside the Quran sources like history and Hadith, and some of the sermons which the Prophet gave. So yes, I would say that in this respect that they have once again to have recourse to the Quran, and because of the fact that this recourse was not present in the case of the election of a ruler, and it was more confined to their understanding that this is something which the Prophet outside of the Quran had communicated to Ali radhiyallahu anhu. So they thought it was their right. So I think that it would not be a very fair assessment to tell them that this whole dispute has resulted because of not following the Quran or not regarding to be the rope of God. Although yes, in one sense, this could be also a point because the Quran has also spoken of the fact that as far as the authority is concerned, political authority is concerned, after the Prophet, then the Quran says Amruhum Shura Bainahum, which means that the person on whom the majority they are confident. I mean, who holds the confidence of the majority is the person who should be ruling. And in the case of Ali Radhiyallahu anhu, we know that this was not brought forward. It was basically brought forward as his right from people who thought that because he belonged to the family of the Prophet, so he had this right, and this right was actually something which the Prophet himself had outside of the Quran communicated to too early, and therefore the rest of the Muslims should follow this. So, if in one way you look at this, then yes, it can be regarded as something which in which the Quran was not made the final authority. And if you take another look, you can say that at times it's not always the fact that you are disregarding the Quran. At times, what happens is that things which your understanding of the Quran give you might be different from what other people have in their own understanding. So at times, understandings can also differ.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Ammar Rasul, please go ahead.
Thank you. Islam. What's up?
Walaikum assalam.
What's up? I wanted to ask a question that I saw. There is a British scholar. He is quite a famous one who has a lot of sort of like talks with scholars from other religions and from other sects, and so in that way he's sort of like quite well versed and even very sharp in his arguments. And he believes that the Quran cannot be explained in many cases or regarding many of the laws without hadith. And one of the ayahs that he quotes in his support of this is ayat 44 of Surah 16. And I can just read the. I can just.
I
read
know
out
the verse. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're referring to the verse which says لِتُبَيَّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ.
So
that he
obviously, I do not know what you are saying in Arabic, but if I can just read out to you
Okay.
the translation in English and the parts that actually I'm posing a question about. And we have sent down to you, O Prophet, the reminder, so that you may explain to people what has been revealed for them, and perhaps they will reflect. So, if I look at this sentence and the way that he presents it as well, it sounds as if the reminder and what has been revealed for them are two different things. Like the reminder has been sent so that it can be explained, the revelation can be explained, so that you may explain to people what has been revealed for them, and perhaps they will reflect. So his argument is that basically, the words reminder is it in itself means that it is something which comes after something. And so the Quran here is talking about the hadith, that the hadith is the reminder which can then explain what has been revealed to them. So my question is, how do you see this, sir? And
So, Ammar Rasul, this verse needs a correct translation. It has not been translated correctly. The word لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ, which means that so that it explain what has been revealed to them. The word explain, which in Arabic is لِتُبَيِّنَ, is erroneously translated. It actually means so that you are able to convey whatever the Almighty has revealed to them. So the word bayyana here does not mean to explain. It just means to disseminate, to convey. It's much the same as what you read in Surah Rahman, which says, Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran khalaq al-insan allamahul bayan. So allama, the word, it's just as the word allama does not always mean to teach. It means to instruct and to present. In a very similar way, the word bayyana in the Arabic language, it always does not mean to explain, merely to convey something, to be able to disseminate something to other people, like just handing them over what the exact message is, the exact text is what is implied here. And if you look at the Quran in this sense, and also you look at the text, the context, you'll see that this is what the actual meaning is. And if you'd like any further explanation, you may look up Ustad Ghamidi's Al-Bayan, in which he has explained this, that how people have wrongly translated the word litubayyana, and then therefore they are forced to believe that because the word is explanation here, so the Prophet was given this stature of explaining. This is one thing. The other thing that you might know is that even if we take it to be in this sense that he was asked to explain the Quran, I can tell you from my own experience of studying Hadith literature for a long time that maybe hardly there could be 10 or 15 instances in which the Quran was explained by the Prophet at any instance, at any place. A very large part of the Quran was never explained by him. So the Hadith would explain partially. I mean, you could just see that 10 or 15 instances in which the Prophet was asked a question and he answered that. He never ever took an initiative to explain the Quran in his whole life. This is not the case. Otherwise, we would have had a whole corpus of a tafsir of the Quran from the Prophet. We don't have any tafsir from the Prophet himself. All that we have are, as I said, 10 or 15 occasions on which he was asked this question. Remember, it was not that he took the initiative. He was asked a question about a certain verse or the meaning of a certain verse, and he said, "Well, this is the answer." So I think that not only is it linguistically incorrect to explain the words of the Quran the way he's not just the only person. A very vast majority of people, they translate this verse in the sense that you have just read out. So not only is it is not linguistically incorrect, it is also historically and factually incorrect.
Sir, very quickly, if you may allow me, is it possible that this verse, and I'm sorry, I do not know the context, but is it possible that this verse is talking about the Prophet explaining the Deen to
Not at all. Not at
the
all.
Ahlul
It's
Kitab?
not. No, it's not
Because
the case at all.
okay,
It's just the question of telling them that the Quran is the key. This is exactly what we have been studying today. That uh, he has been revealed. I mean, to him, the Quran was revealed so that whatever they have before them, they could have it explained, and whatever they have in the sense of the Quran before them could be conveyed to them. So basically, it's just telling us the same thing which other verses of the Quran have asked us to say. Yatlu alayhim ayatihi wa yuzakkihim, which means that his responsibility is to recite the Quran and disseminate it, because this was his primary responsibility. That being the messenger of God, whatever revelation he would receive, he was bound to have it disseminated. So it is exactly the same responsibility which is being asked to fulfill.
all right, sir. Thank you very much.
Very much. Abdul Rahman, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Sir, with regards to role models, I just wanted to ask, like, this test the entire humankind is going through. Does Allah test a person according to his role models, or is it some kind of framework mentioned in the Quran for testing humankind?
You see,
Because some people they say that if someone says that this person is my role model, or suppose I say that Prophet is my role model, but I will not be able to set an example as Prophet did. So would it be right also to set Prophet as a role model because he is a prophet and the benchmark is too high? Can everyone reach that benchmark?
So the first thing that we have to understand is that we never set this example before ourselves. It is the Quran who has said, "Laqad kana lakum fi Rasulillahi uswatun hasana," that it is the personality of the Prophet who is the best example for you. So it's basically the Quran telling its followers that if you have to look up to any person, then it is the Prophet. And remember, in this case, you don't have to become at par with him. This is something, of course, that we cannot achieve. What is being said here is that he is your role model. He is someone that you have to look up to and come as close to him as is possible. What best you can do. So it's like a very high standard that he has set, but you have to come as close as possible to him. You might not be able to come exactly at par with him, and that's not even a requirement because, of course, he had some extraordinary abilities in this regard. But for the rest of us, this is like a very high standard, and we have to reach as close to it as is possible.
Thank you very much, Dr.
I
Saleem.
have
You can go
follow up. Yeah. What if somebody has a role model who is not the prophet, or would I be accountable in eyes of God that why did you select this person as a role model instead of the prophet, which I already said? Will God question me in that way?
Not at all. I mean, you see, a role model depends on what particular role model and what particular area of a role model you have selected. I mean, the Prophet is a role model as an overall personality, as a wonderful human being, and all of us look up to him. And we read the Quran. The Quran tells us about his personality, so that is something that we are automatically doing. Other than that, if we have other role models in our real life, that is fine also. So there are people who might be very philanthropic. There are people who might be very generous. There are people who might be very kind. So to have such examples, such human exemplars is also something very good. It is not negating the fact that you are not following other role models as the Prophet himself. So that is like the highest role of morality that you can set before yourselves. But other than that, maybe your father, your mother, your uncle, someone in your office, someone in your class. I mean, they could be very inspiring to you.
Anyone,
Anyone,
irrespective of religion.
irrespective of religion.
Okay, sir. So I would not be questioned
Not at
by
all. Not
Allah.
at all.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you so much.
Much, Dr. Saleem. Last call for questions since I don't see any more raised hands. Amar Rasul, you're unmuted. Did you have a question?
Yes, I would like to ask a question.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
okay, thank you very much. Dr. Saab, this is an ayat 175 from Ali Imran, and it says 175 from Ali Imran, that warning was only from Satan trying to prompt you to fear his followers. So do not fear them, fear me if you are true believers. I just wanted to ask you, Dr. Saab, what warning is the Quran talking about that came from Satan?
I would need to I would need to study the background myself. I think if I remember correctly, this is a verse which is actually commenting on the aftermath of the Battle of Uhud, in
I
which
see.
so if you look up the context, you'll find that Satan had tried to inveigle Muslims to not obey the Prophet. So remember, there were people who were stationed at a particular place, and they were told that they must not leave their place. And it seems that because of their bad demeanor, which they exhibited in previous occasions, that on that occasion Satan was able to get the better of them, and they left their places, and the battle of Uhud was lost. So I think that is the context, but you need to reconfirm. It's a very simple case of just looking back a couple of verses, and you'll find that.
Okay. All right, sir. Because I was intrigued about the words that warning was only from Satan.
So
Almost as
always
if.
remember, that don't go after translations, because you see, not all translations are very accurate. Look at it, one or two or three. If you have a doubt about a certain word, look up another translation. Especially if you can look up to the Quran and Al Bayan of our respected teachers, you'll find how the word has actually been used. On most occasions, the English translation does not at times do justice with the Arabic word.
All right, so thank you very much. Thank you.
In fact, I do not remember the verse. It is something like "Innamastazallahum shaitan," which means that Satan was successful in making them stumble. Something like
So
that.
I can very quickly read the first part to you. Innama zalikumush shaitanu
Yukhawwifu awliyahu.
yukhaffifu
Yes,
yukhaffifu awliya'ahu.
yes. So
All
it's
right.
basically, it's like saying that he makes you scared of himself. Yukhawwifu awliya'ahu, which means that he is someone who frightens his friends from yourselves, something like
Okay.
that,
Okay. So he puts the fear of his friends in your heart.
in your hearts. Yes,
Okay.
but yeah, as I said, you need to just look at some of the other translations as well, because this does not seem to be an accurate translation. So
All right.
khawwafa basically in Arabic doesn't mean to warn; it means to scare someone.
Okay. Yes. Yes, that makes sense. Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We are very close to the ending time. If we don't have any more questions, we'll be ending the session here. Last call for questions. All right, I think that's it for today then.
Okay.
Dr. Saleem, thank you so much for this another wonderful session and for answering our questions. And to the participants, thank you for participating. Thank you for asking questions. And inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow in another session of textual study of the Qur'an. So until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.